I've always had a fascination with plants and with gardening, but in the last few years, I've started taking it just more seriously. Now, I would not say I have a green thumb by any means at all. I still have a whole lot to learn, but every time I learn something new about plants, it amazes me how much I learned about myself along the way. One thing that stands out to me about all plants is how there are so many different stages and phases of development. They each have their own requirements at different times throughout these processes. And so you have to work with them and help give them exactly what they need at each phase. This in front of me is a fiddle leaf fig tree, not quite unlike the fig tree mentioned in today's gospel reading, actually. The fig tree was actually mentioned a few times throughout the Bible. These don't get quite as big as the fig tree, but they do withstand a little bit of colder temperatures, so that's why we can grow them here indoors. Now, if you were to grow a regular fig tree outdoors, it's a long process from seed to actually getting fruit from it. First, you have to plant the seed, then you got to get the roots to set, and then you have to help nurture it, develop it into a little sapling, and then you have to protect it from all the different elements of nature and get it strong enough to withstand them on their own. And once it develops into a full-grown tree, it can still take 2 to 6 years to get any fruit off of it. And there's nothing you can do to hurry that process along. You just have to set with it, with a little bit of patience, a little bit of love, and just wait for the good things to happen. Through each stage of development, there are lots of changes that take place too. And very often, it can be a real struggle for the plant to move on to that next stage. But with the gardener's help, and when the time is just right, the plant will bloom and the fruit will be ready. And if we can just sit with it long enough, with love, just long enough to let it happen, we can watch it grow into something pretty amazing. These plants are just like us. We too go through a lot of changes and a lot of different stages and phases of our development, whether that be physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, whatever the case may be. But with each new phase comes its own changes. And there are new things we have to learn and grow from each one. This is hard. Dealing with change in any regard is not easy. And it always produces some sort of tension. This plant, much like Advent, reminds us that we are in the middle of the tension. And while it all may be really tough, we're being moved and we're being trellised into that future version of ourselves. So when things get tense, or life gets a little too tough, or you're just struggling to keep going right now, you don't want to move on to that next phase just quite yet. Think of this fig tree. And remember what Jesus tells us in Matthew 24 about the fig tree. He said when the branches are tender and it's starting to sprout new leaves, you know summer's getting really close. Pretty soon, you're going to have some really tasty fruit to snack on. So if life is feeling really bitter right now, sit patiently with the gardener, because the light in your life is going to return again.